Two topics that a lot of Rise of Kingdoms players have been talking about lately are piloting and power creep, because over the weekend while I was away, Rise of Kingdoms sent out this rest mode survey, and then of course, as you guys know, the Wedge formation recently landed in the game, which has caused some discussion around power creep, and some of you guys have actually asked me to cover both of these topics as well. I think this is because a lot of content creators are talking about both of these things right now. I know Chisco made a video about both of these topics. I know Chadsky made a video about both of these topics. I know Stu made a video about piloting. I know Cortex made a video about why he left Imperium. I know in the past Shappy Gaming has talked about piloting, and recently the Wedge formation. And so of course some people might be curious about what my thoughts and opinions are, especially because my first video discussing the problems with piloting was posted on November 20th 2023, so 2.5 years ago. And by the way, I was already in the creator program at that point. And then when it comes to power creep, I've posted 4 dedicated videos to this topic, the first one being all the way back in May of 2023. And when it comes to the formation system and armaments, I have been critical of this system since at least October of 2022, again in January of 2023, again in November of 2023. And so it's no wonder that you guys are kind of like, hey Omniarch, where's your video discussing these topics? And I'm just going to be honest, it's a little bit bittersweet to be having this conversation, because I have been pointing to these problems for, as you saw, 2 to 3 years now, and we're now finally having these conversations, and it's just a little bit exhausting, right? But of course I am happy to address this once again. So welcome everyone to the party. Okay, a little 2 years late, but you finally figured it out. Let's all have a chat. Okay, but before we jump in, of course, what's going on, guys? Cheers. Now, as you guys know, I'm a sponsored partnered creator with Rise of Kingdoms, so if you want more Rise of Kingdoms content, subscribe down below and double check. You might think you're sub, but you're actually not. And like I said before, a lot of the videos where I've talked about these problems, I was already an associate or partnered creator with Rise of Kingdoms. So I think some people that are new here are like, oh, he's sponsored, he's not going to talk about this stuff. It's like, buddy, you're a tourist. Okay, I live here. I know. I've beat these topics to death, I feel like, over the years. But anyway, let's start with the rest mode survey, because this is the most recent thing. This just landed in the inbox 2 days ago. It says, dear governor, to help governors better balance and manage their game time, we are planning to introduce a new rest mode feature in the near future. After engaging in extended periods of battle, your character will no longer be able to activate War Frenzy and will instead enter a rest mode state. Now, this first part of the mail is a bit confusing, because as you guys know, we already have rest mode in Rise of Kingdoms. It's just exclusive to Pioneer servers, but this is worded as if they're introducing this system for the first time, which is a little weird. It makes me wonder if they're just planning on adding this to the game permanently, like across all servers, all KvKs, home kingdom, everything. Maybe, I don't know. It's just worded weird, like we already have heard of this, we already know about this is already here, right? Anyway, the mail goes on to say, before each KvK, participating kingdoms will also be able to vote on whether to enable rest mode for that lost kingdom. To help us further optimize the game and provide a better experience, please tap the link below to participate in our survey. Your feedback is extremely valuable to us. And then they link the survey right here. You get like 300 gems if you actually do this. Okay, so the second half of this mail maybe clarifies it a little bit, right? Maybe they are planning on adding rest mode to all KvKs, and you just vote on whether you have it or not. Maybe that's the case, I don't know. But if you have this survey available to you and you haven't done it already, I highly recommend that you do this. This is how you give feedback to the developers. They're not asking for fun, they genuinely want to know. I'm not going to tell you guys what to fill out here. In fact, I'd rather you guys do this survey now before watching the rest of this video, because I don't want to influence you guys in any way. Just take a minute and genuinely reflect on the questions and think about, okay, am I affected by this? Am I not? How do I feel about this? Give them your honest feedback. I'll give you guys a second, go do the survey. All right, you guys, you did it. Okay, you're back. Welcome back. Thank you for returning. Let's actually talk about this. Okay, so why are they trying to introduce a rest mode feature? The answer is piloting. You know it, I know it, everybody knows it. And so far in the Pioneer testing, we've seen that rest mode is triggered after 16 hours of War Frenzy. Okay, and so the idea is that if a player is trying to have pilots on their account, they're capped at 16 hours, because after that they can't actually fight anymore. And at the last in-person meetup, this data was actually shared with the community from the developers themselves. This is actual back-end data from the developers from looking at Pioneer tests and seeing how many players were actually negatively impacted by the rest mode feature. Okay, so here you can see 94.8% of players didn't even perceive this new rest mode feature, which means they didn't fight enough to even notice this at all, right? at least not straight 16 hours or whatever. We see 3% of players got a warning notification saying like you're about to hit your war frenzy limit basically, and then 2.2% of players actually hit that limit. Okay, so what we can see here is that 95% of players that were in these pioneer tests, right? I don't want you guys to be confused. This is not the whole game. Okay, this is not every kingdom ever. No, this is data from the pioneer tests that had the rest mode. Okay, 95% of players didn't actually notice it, right? So then we have to sit back and ask ourselves like, okay, well, first of all, it's a good thing that most players didn't notice this at all, right? That kind of means that it's sort of an elegant approach to solving the piloting problem, because it doesn't affect regular players, but it does affect the players that are most likely piloting, right? And I'm not saying they all are, but I'm saying most likely that's what's happening. A very small percentage of players, as we can see here based on the data, actually hit that limit, and even fewer of that are players that did it all on their own, right? So I'm not saying that those players don't matter or that they don't exist, but clearly they're extremely rare. Like frankly, it is a very small number of players, and really a majority of these players are probably all filtered up to the top of the game, right? And so in Imperium kingdoms and in really high-end competitive kingdoms, that's where a lot of this 5% is going to be, right? And so they're kind of all playing with each other, and so it feels like to them that a lot of people are frustrated with this because everyone they know is affected. But once you zoom out to everybody who's in these KvKs that have the pioneer rest mode, it's like, okay, well actually it's a very small percentage of the player base. Okay, now the other sort of counter argument to that is like, okay, well, if 95% of players didn't even notice this, then what's the point anyway, right? Like, are we gonna act like there's no piloting now? Like, surely not. I mean, clearly there's still gonna be some piloting, right? Like that's obviously still happening. Clearly, you know it, I know it, everyone knows it. And so if this war frenzy limit isn't even doing anything for 95% of players, why have it to begin with, right? And I think that that is a fair criticism of this attempt at solving the problem, but the sort of goal that I think the developers have here is that they're capping all players evenly, right? This is a 16-hour war frenzy cap for all players regardless, right? And I think the reason that they went with this is because they haven't been able to figure out a good way to definitively prove if players are piloting or not. And I know that that sounds ridiculous, right? Because all of us, literally all of us who care about this problem, have sat back in our comfortable chair in our bedroom and we thought to ourselves, well, I could solve the problem, right? And like in a perfect world, I'm sure there is a solution that we could come up with, right? But I do think it's a little bit naive of us, okay, myself included. I think it's a little naive to say, oh, well, I thought about this for a couple of hours and I think I can solve the piloting problem. And it's like, guys, there's like people that develop the game that have spent the last 9 to 12 months thinking about this problem, and like they have infinitely more data than we do, and they have a lot more to lose than we do, right? Like piloting negatively affects how I experience the game, but they make millions of dollars off the game. Okay, so they have way more to lose by getting this wrong. Okay, so their stakes are way higher than us individually, and also they've spent way more time with way more data and way more knowledge about this problem. And so if we just sit back and say, oh, well, I mean, clearly the answer is, you know, restricting IPs, or clearly the answer is device limits, or clearly the answer is this. It's like, gosh, I mean, like, guys, I'm pretty sure they thought of that, right? Like I'm pretty sure after 9 months they could arrive at the same conclusion that we all arrived at in 15 minutes, right? So clearly there's a reason why they haven't implemented the most obvious solutions that everybody is throwing out there, right? And to be clear, I'm not against those things because I don't pilot, so I don't care if they implement a device limit or a region lock to your IP so you can't jump from one region to the next in 10 minutes or whatever. Like I'm cool if they want to try all that stuff. It's not going to affect me, it's fine, and I want to see piloting solved, right? So like if they want to try it and test it, by all means do it. But I think most likely, like if we just use Occam's razor here for a second, right? Like why would the devs not do the most obvious solutions, right? It's probably because they thought of it, it's not going to work for whatever reason, right? Whether it's a limitation technically or legally, right? Or whatever the case might be, or VPNs are a thing and people travel, and like there's a million reasons, both things that I can think of and things that you and I have never thought of, as to why they don't just stop piloting, right? It sounds so easy, like, oh yeah, just stop people from piloting. It's like, I mean, I'm sure they would love to. Now, all of that being said, okay, I do still think that they could take a bit more of a heavy-handed approach here, right? I mean, like if we use a little bit of common sense, I think it's probably pretty obvious with certain data points that they have on the back end that somebody's piloting, right? You could just ban them. like just literally ban them. You do it retroactively and I'd be fine with that, right? Like, or just make an example out of some people, like literally, because right now there's no fear, right? People have no fear in the community about if they're going to get negatively affected, so they just do whatever they want. If you just make an example out of like a couple of high-end accounts and just permaban them, problem solved, right? And it's like, oh well, you can't permaban them because they spent all this money on the account. And it's like, actually, if you read the TOS, like, you don't own your account, you don't own anything on this. You're paying to access your instance of this service. That's it. You own nothing. Okay, and so I suspect there's no legal boundary to prevent them from just banning you for breaking the TOS, where they could totally do that, make an example out of a couple of people, cause some chaos, right? And then people might think twice about doing it. That's what I think should be done. But also, if that causes all the high-end players to quit, then we don't have a game in 12 months, right? Like, that's how that's kind of how that works. So it's just a lot harder of a problem to solve if we really kind of look at all the different moving parts and components to this. So that's why I think the developers have went with the rest mode option. Okay, it hurts the least number of people, it doesn't cause anybody to get banned, and it does actually put everybody on a level playing field. Whether you're piloting or not, it doesn't matter. Your account can only be in War Frenzy for 16 hours, and I think that's a nice starting place, at least, right? So I think the War Frenzy thing is fine. I'm not affected by it. 94.8% of you guys are not affected by it. And I also think it would be a good idea to let kingdoms vote for the rest mode, right? Like, just literally just give the problem to the players and just let the players figure it out, right? Anecdotally, from who I've talked to, it seems like most regular players are fine with the rest mode because they have an excuse to log off now. Like, they finally can set down that burden and they can say, oh, I can have dinner with my kids, oh, I can get a full night's sleep tonight. Like, they're not obligated or forced to be online 24/7, right? Or have somebody else do it for them. And also, the cool part about having kingdoms choose if you want rest mode or not is kind of just like, okay, fine, if you're in Imperium and you want other people to play your video game for you, which is like, I feel like I'm drinking crazy juice even saying that, right? Like, it like this reality doesn't even make logical sense anymore, right? Like, somebody else is playing your video game for you. Like, what are we even doing, right? What are we talking about? But okay, if they want to do that, whatever their reasoning is, okay, if winning means so much to them that they're willing to just outsource the love of their own hobby, then by all means, just let the Imperiums fight each other with pilots, and they'll just burn themselves out if they want to, and the rest of the game can vote to use the cap and not have to worry about it as much. It'll always be a thing, but it just won't be as big of a problem because the accounts won't be online for 72 hours. They'll only be on for 16 a day. So all in all, just like I said 2.5 years ago, I do think piloting is a big problem with the game. I do think that it needs to be addressed, and I'm open to having them solve it in whatever way they want, including rest mode, considering most players aren't even going to experience it, and it does put everybody on a level playing field, even if some of those people still want to use pilots for 16 hours in one day. The real problem is, like I said, the accounts being online 48, 72 hours straight, no downtime. Okay, next, let's talk about power creep in Rise of Kingdoms in 2026 because of the Wedge Formation 2. Okay, and this is the discussion that like breaks my heart. Okay, this is like, frankly, the second time I'm recording this video because I didn't know how to properly express my feelings towards power creep in 2026. But let me try to give you guys sort of where I'm coming from. Okay, when you go back and you look at some of my earlier videos discussing the formation system in armaments, sort of the conclusion that I arrived at is that the formation system in its original form was so flawed and broken that I didn't have a solution, and my recommendation was that they should just throw it out, like literally throw the whole system in the garbage, refund everybody, and try again, right? Like, that was honestly the conclusion that I came to, because the system was so bad when it launched. Like, it actually provided no value to anybody. Like, it was actually bad. Just to remind you, if you weren't there was no transmuting, there was no transmutation crystals, there were no conversion stones, there was no pity system, there were no rare inscriptions, only regular and special, and it was basically just RNG hell. Okay, and through the law of averages, I came to the conclusion that clearly players who are able to get their hands on more armaments, period, are going to be far ahead of free to play and low spenders over the course of about a year. And so when I think about power creep in Rise of Kingdoms, and I think about the armament system and the formation system, not only have I been critical of this system since the very beginning, I mean, it's hard to be more critical than than me just straight up saying delete this, right? Now, obviously the formation system is in a better place now. It's had like 6 or 7 revisions, okay? And I think that's kind of evidence that like I was kind of right, because a good system doesn't need to be revised 6, 7, 8 times, right? Like with the pity system and re-rolling and refreshing the re-roll chances and all this other stuff. But I tell you all of this, okay, sort of to like set the stage with my track record here, okay? Because a lot of you guys maybe didn't even watch me all the way back then. So I need to just be clear on what my original stance was with this system, okay? So all of that being said, when I look at Wedge Formation 2, and this is going to be a bit nuanced, so I need you guys to follow me, okay? Here's something that I think is true. I think Wedge Formation 2 is unnecessary power creep in the current way with which we get conversion stones and the way with which the players currently understand the direction and frequency of formation releases. Okay, so by that I mean a lot of us assume that new formations, relevant formations, PvP open field formations are going to be coming out every 6 months, right? Because that was sort of the rough draft that the developers mentioned about a year ago. Okay, now we don't know if that's still true, but that's kind of the assumption that we're all operating on. And as I mentioned in my previous video talking about Wedge 2, I pointed to Ruz, who made a very good post over on the official Rise of Kingdoms Discord identifying the problem with the Wedge Formation 2 and then actually giving a really elegant solution to that problem. If you guys missed that video, check it out. I also linked to his suggestion in that video description, so you guys can leave a thumbs up on it as well if you want to. But again, I do think that the developers have a bit of a problem on their hands that they have to solve before Delta or Pincer 2. By that I mean we need to figure out a way to get more players conversion stones just by playing the game through events, through KvK, whatever the case might be. It has to be more attainable, or it has to be cheaper. There has to be maybe more in the bundles, or they have to be fewer gems in the shop, because like right now 10,000 gems a pop is like really a lot of gems, right, for everybody really. So while I do think that the power creep of the formation system and the direction it seems to be going is probably going to be an issue that needs to be solved over the next 6 to 12 months, at the same time I don't think that this power creep is going to kill Rise of Kingdoms, okay? And here's why. The jump from no formation system to having the formation system was a massive leap in power creep compared to Wedge 1 to Wedge 2. Does that make sense? Like the energy and outcry that we see for Wedge Formation 2 is about 2 to 3 years late, because the real problem wasn't Wedge Formation 2. It was all of this to begin with from the very start, right? And so we're having this conversation way too late, and it's surprising to me, and that's why I said it's kind of bittersweet. It's like, in fact, it's almost a little annoying, right, that people are getting mad now when it's like, man, like the real problem was here all along and nobody said anything. Or maybe they did and I just missed it. I don't know. I mean, it was 2 to 3 years ago. Maybe I'm misremembering, but it just seems like right now more people are mad about Wedge Formation 2 than the literal system that it's built on being kind of parasitic to the Rock experience. I mean, think about it. The formation system came out, and did it change what marches you ran? The answer was no. It was just everyone got Wedge Formation 1. It was 5% skill damage, and then everyone continued to use the armies that they had always been using. It was just another way to get stats, except unlike the equipment system, it was fully random, and that's way worse, right? I mean, really, it's just worse. And so that's why my feelings on this are a bit nuanced, right? Because on one hand, I think clearly there is some tweaking that needs to be done with the way that new formations come into the game, how many conversion stones we get, the frequency with which the formations land in the game matters a lot, right? All of that I'm on board with that, obviously, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a player of Rise of Kingdoms. I don't want to have to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars every 6 months just to convert all the stuff I already have. That's a little bit ridiculous, right? But at the same time, like, is this the nail in the coffin for the game? It's not, right? Because if the formation system itself didn't cause people to quit, and the crystal tech system didn't cause people to quit, like I don't know, from my perspective, it's just like we've seen so many bigger issues to the game than this, that it's just a little bit surprising that we're now having this conversation about power creep when, like, I don't know, I feel like people have been kind of asleep with this problem for a very long time, and I'm glad we're having a conversation now. But again, it just feels really late, and I'm kind of surprised by the sudden concern with the power creep, even though it's been here all along, right? And I think really, I think where this is coming from, if I had to guess, it's that this power creep affects the high-end heavy spenders, whereas the implementation of the formation system to begin with had a bigger impact on free-to-play and low spenders, right? And that's not to say that Wedge Formation 2 doesn't affect free-to-play low spenders. Of course it affects them. It affects them more than anything. But I think because there is now a dollar value attached to this for the high-end players, and it also, like, not only does it kind of price out the low spenders, but even the medium spenders and maybe even some of the higher spenders, I think that's why we're seeing some outrage right now. And like, that's the part that's a little bit frustrating, right? You know, like when we have issues that are big for the free-to-play community and it's like a real big problem for free-to-play, it's like there's some people talk about it and like there's outrage on Discord, and then like a week later it's just business as usual, right? But like when there's something that the whales are mad about, well, now it's a huge problem, right? And this was the same thing before the iconic tiers came to the equipment system. Remember when they said, oh, we're going to introduce level 55 and level 60 gear or whatever the case was, and everyone like suddenly lost their minds. They were like, wait a minute, oh my god, my equipment from 4 years ago was going to get power crept. What is, oh my god? And like, look, I'm being like kind of facetious, right? But like, it was just funny when they announced that, because all the whales freaked out because they had all special talented this, that, and the other thing, and all the free-to-play players were like, oh well, I don't have a special talented this or that. In fact, half my gear is purple, right? They would just be able to craft the new stuff. So again, it's one of those situations where it feels like outrage for issues seems to be disproportionately high when it affects the heavy spending players. If it only affects free to play and low spenders, then it's kind of a lukewarm response, or at least it's a big response over on Discord and on Facebook groups or whatever, and then it's gone, right? So that's kind of where I'm at with this. Do they need to adjust things? For sure. Is more and more power creep bad for the game? I think so, right? And just to be clear, like, power creep is not categorically bad for the game. It's not bad for any video game, right? Like, whether we admit it or not, we like to collect stuff in these games. We like to see the incremental progress of our accounts. That's why you log in every day. That's why it feels good to get a new commander, or to finally get that special talent, or to get the iconic upgrade, or to roll something and get a max all damage 2% on the roll, right? Like, it feels good to make progress. And so in order for you to have things to progress to, there has to be newer, stronger, better things, right? And so power creep is always going to be there in some capacity, and you want it there, right? That's what you do when you invest in new commanders. It's like you wanted something new to play with. Imagine we had the same commanders since 2018, right? Like, the game would be boring, because it would be like, oh, well, we already know how the game works. The game is solved, right? And so some level of power creep is good, but it's about finding the sweet spot, right? If there's too much power creep, then there's just what you can't keep up, and it's too much, and it's unfair, and it breaks the game. If there's not enough power creep, then the game gets stale, it gets boring, the meta is solved, there's nothing to chase, and people stop playing, they lose interest, whatever, right? So categorically, power creep is not the problem. It's just when it's off balance, right? And I think that the formation 2.0, right, I think is a little bit off balance, right? Again, I'm totally on board with that, but again, it's just, man, like, is this the thing that's going to kill the game? It's not the thing that's going to kill the game. As always, the thing that ends up killing big games is death by 1,000 cuts, right? And is this the 1,000th cut? I doubt it. Something will be eventually, right? But I don't think this is it, especially if the formation itself wasn't enough. So hopefully the developers have maybe a solution to this problem before Delta 2 comes out, or Pincer 2 comes out, whatever the next one is, right? So they have at least 6 months to figure out a solution here. Do they need to solve the problem today? No, I don't think so. I think most players were prepared for this, right? Or at least if you watched my channel, you were. I talked about this for like 9 months before this came in the game. I warned everybody. I told you to save your stones. So I think a lot of people, you know, were prepared for this potentially, but they don't have enough for what's next. And I think that's where a lot of people are frustrated or concerned or worried. They're like, okay, if I get Wedge 2, I'm not going to be able to afford Delta 2 or Pincer 2. And if that comes out in 4 months or 6 months or whatever, then I'm screwed, right? And that's especially true for rally garrison leaders who have, you know, 3 or 4 special inscriptions. It's going to cost them 30 or 40 stones for 1 march. Like, that's crazy. So that's kind of where I'm at with the formation system and power creep. I think this is a little too far tuned in the power creep direction, but I don't think that it's like code red. They have to solve it today. I think they've got a couple of months to figure it out before the next one, and that's when it's really going to be a problem, right? That Delta 2 and Pincer 2 overdue, that's when we'll have a problem if they don't do anything between now and then. So hopefully they are maybe watching the video or looking at the different feedback that's been given to them from other outlets, other creators, people on Discord, whatever the case might be. That's my thoughts on that. And guys, if you made it to the end of the video, hopefully you'll drop a thumbs up down below. It really does help out the channel a ton. And anytime we talk about these sort of controversial issues where I have a little bit more of a nuanced discussion about it, there's always going to be people that misinterpret my opinions on this and they think I'm just a sponsored, paid off shill or whatever the case is, and if it's not pitchforks and torches in the streets, then I'm somehow just not fighting for the cause. And at this point, it's been, like I said, 2 to 3 years of me talking about both of these problems, and what I've learned over that time is that you have to pick your battles, right? And you have to pick the ones that really are problems with the aim, like core fundamental make or break problems. If all we do is just complain about everything, then it's really hard to take that seriously because it's not constructive feedback, it's just whining about every update, right? And because I'm taking a more nuanced approach to this discussion for this video, I'm sure people are going to dislike it, so help me fight off those dislikes by dropping a thumbs up down below. While you're down there, consider subscribing to the channel and clicking the bell to be notified the next time I upload a Rise of Kingdoms video. And of course, drop a comment down below what you think about both of these things. Are they big problems right now? Are they being blown out of proportion? Let me know in the comments. With that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Peace.